They told him it would never fly again. A 70-year-old Soviet helicopter, dragged from a forgotten hangar, rusted and outdated. But on a frozen morning near Kiju, it lifted off the ground, armed with modern weapons, and headed straight into a war zone that had already consumed billions of dollars in cutting-edge Western technology. No one expected it to return, yet it did, and it kept returning. Night after night, mission after mission, outlasting drones that cost 10 times more and jets that required 100 technicians just to stay airborne. Something was happening on the battlefields of Ukraine that military analysts weren't prepared to explain. Soviet-era technology, written off as scrap metal, was outperforming some of the most advanced systems the modern world had ever built. At first, they called it luck, then desperation. But as the months dragged on and the old machines kept flying, a different truth began to surface. These weren't just relics. They were solutions, and the engineers who built them half a century ago understood something that today's defense contractors had forgotten. War doesn't care about your budget. It cares about what works when everything else fails. The Met helicopter wasn't designed to be elegant. It was designed to be unkillable. Built in the 1960s during the height of the Cold War, it was meant to operate in Siberian winters, Afghan deserts, and muddy fields where no runway existed. It didn't need a clean room or a specialized crew. A farmer with a wrench could keep it running. And that philosophy, that brutal simplicity, is exactly what makes it so valuable today. Modern warfare has become a religion of precision. Guided missiles that cost more than a house. Drones that require satellite uplinks and constant software updates. Tanks with digital dashboards and sensors that fail the moment they touch mud. It's impressive on paper. But when the power grid goes down, when the GPS signal cuts out, when you're in the middle of a field with no infrastructure and no time, all that complexity becomes a liability. Soviet engineers didn't have the luxury of perfection. They had to build for chaos. For conditions where nothing would go as planned, where the enemy wasn't just the other side, but the cold, the dust, the distance, and the complete absence of support. So they overbuilt everything. Thick armor, simple engines, parts that could be scavenged or improvised. They assumed failure and designed around it. That's why a Ukrainian mechanic can fix a Soviet-era tank with a blowtorch and spare parts from a tractor, while a Western tank sits disabled, waiting for a certified technician to fly in from Germany with a proprietary circuit board that costs $15,000 and takes 3 weeks to arrive. It's not that one is better, it's that one was built for a different kind of war. A war that's messy, long, and unforgiving. But this isn't just about helicopters and tanks. It's about a design philosophy that's being rediscovered in real time. Take the AK-47. It's not the most accurate rifle ever made. It's not the lightest or the most advanced, but it's the most widespread weapon in human history because it works in conditions where everything else stops. You can bury it in sand, drop it in a river, freeze it in ice, and it will still fire. That reliability isn't an accident. It's the result of intentional design choices that prioritized function over form. Contrast that with some modern rifles that jam if you don't clean them every few hundred rounds, that require specific ammunition types and controlled environments. They're incredible pieces of engineering, but they're fragile. And fragility in combat is fatal. The Soviets understood that a weapon you can't rely on is worse than no weapon at all. So they built things that a conscript with no training could operate and maintain under the worst possible circumstances. This same logic extended to everything they touched. Soviet aircraft were designed with high ground clearance so they could take off from rough fields. Their engines were built to tolerate foreign object damage because they knew debris and dirt were inevitable. They didn't optimize for speed or stealth. They optimized for survival. And in a drawn-out conflict where logistics and endurance matter more than a single decisive strike, that approach becomes devastatingly effective. The war in Ukraine has forced a reckoning. Western militaries spent decades preparing for short, high-tech conflicts, surgical strikes, rapid dominance, shock and awe. But this war didn't end in weeks. It became a grinding, attritional struggle where the side that can keep more machines running, more soldiers supplied, and more systems operational wins. And in that environment, Soviet-era tech has proven shockingly competitive. Ukrainian forces are using T-72 tanks from the 1970s alongside modern Leopard tanks from Germany. And while the Leopards are superior in almost every measurable way, the T-72s are easier to fix, easier to fuel, and easier to keep in the fight. When a Leopard breaks down, it's out of action for days or weeks. When a T-72 breaks down, it's back online in hours. That difference compounds over time. And in a war of attrition, time is everything. There's something almost poetic about it. The most expensive military technology ever created, designed in boardrooms and tested in labs, being outlasted by machines built in Soviet factories that no longer exist. It's not that the new technology is bad. It's that it was built for a war that never came. A clean war, a quick war. A war where supply chains are intact and every variable is controlled. But real war isn't clean, it's chaos. And chaos rewards simplicity. It rewards machines that don't need permission to function, that don't require a manual or a technician or a firmware update, that just work no matter what. Soviet engineers built for that reality, and decades later, their work is proving its worth in ways no one anticipated. This isn't nostalgia. It's not about romanticizing the past or pretending that old technology is inherently superior. It's about recognizing that different challenges require different solutions, and sometimes the thing that looks outdated is actually the thing that's best suited for the job. A modern smartphone can do 1,000 things a rotary phone never could. But if the power goes out and the cell towers fail, the rotary phone on a landline still works. Simplicity has a kind of invincibility that complexity can never match. The lesson here isn't that we should stop innovating, it's that we should innovate with humility, with an understanding that the most advanced solution isn't always the most effective one, that resilience and reliability matter as much as performance, that the best tool is the one you can actually use when everything goes wrong. Soviet-era technology embodies that philosophy. And on the battlefields of Ukraine, it's proving that philosophy still holds. What surprised me the most wasn't just how a detailed historical analysis book on Soviet military engineering improved my experience with understanding modern warfare strategy, but how everything started to feel different once I switched to the right one. I didn't expect such a clear change, and honestly, I tested more than a few before finding what actually worked. This isn't a promo or sponsorship, just sharing real results that made a noticeable difference for me. I'll leave the link below, in case you want to dig into it yourself and see what I mean. The war will end someday, the headlines will fade, but the lessons won't. What we're witnessing isn't just a conflict between nations, it's a test of ideas, a contest between philosophies of design, preparation, and resilience. And the machines that were built for the worst-case scenario are the ones still flying, still fighting, still proving that sometimes the old ways aren't outdated. They're just waiting for the right moment to show their worth. There's a quiet power in that, in knowing that the things we discard, the things we underestimate, might be exactly what we need when the world stops cooperating. It's a reminder that progress isn't always forward. Sometimes it's circular. Sometimes it's about remembering what we knew before we got too clever for our own good. And sometimes, the future looks a lot like a 70-year-old helicopter, lifting off into the dark, carrying the weight of a lesson we forgot we'd already learned. Tell us which country or city you're watching from. See you in the next video. Bye.